Nothing breeds insomnia quite like a wife on her fourth late project this week. That, or the gas station coffee I'd been mainlining since Tuesday. I stood in our cramped kitchen at 11:30 p.m., watching the fridge light flicker like a fading heartbeat when Nola's second phone started buzzing on the granite countertop. The phone I wasn't supposed to know about. "You up?" E. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. My name is Porter Keller. I'm 36, a supply chain consultant who fixes broken logistics for companies that can't figure out why their warehouses leak money. I'm good at finding problems other people miss. Apparently, I'd been missing a big one right under my own roof. The front door slammed. Nola's heels clicked across our hardwood floors with that particular rhythm that meant she was either drunk or rattled. Maybe both. "Porter, you awake?" Her voice carried that fake sweetness she used when she'd screwed up somehow. "Kitchen," I called back, sliding the phone back to its exact position. "How was the client dinner?" Nola appeared in the doorway, her auburn hair slightly mussed, lipstick gone, and her pencil skirt twisted around backward. She was 34, beautiful in that sharp-edged corporate way that had first attracted me 8 years ago. Tonight, she looked like she'd been through a blender. "Exhausting," she said, not meeting my eyes. "The Hartwell account is demanding impossible timelines." I nodded sympathetically. "That why your skirt's on backward?" Her face went white, then red. I was in the bathroom. The lighting was terrible and I... Relax, Nola. I'm just messing with you." I forced a laugh. "You look like you could use some sleep." She glared at me with an expression I'd never seen before, something between relief and fury. "Don't be an ass, Porter. Some of us have real jobs with real pressure." She stormed upstairs, leaving me alone with the flickering fridge light and a phone that kept buzzing with messages from E. After she'd gone to bed, I did what any good consultant would do when faced with incomplete data. I investigated. Nola's laptop sat open on the kitchen table, password protected but not logged out of her email. She'd always been careless with technology. What I found made my stomach drop through the floor. A secret folder labeled EB Personal contained months of chat logs, suggestive office memos, and hotel booking confirmations. But the real kicker was a video file dated 3 days ago. Grainy security footage of Nola and a younger man I didn't recognize, going at it on what looked like a conference table in some glass-walled office. I laughed. Actually laughed out loud in my dark kitchen, because the alternative was putting my fist through the laptop screen. "Guess I just found tomorrow's project," I muttered, closing the laptop and heading upstairs. But I didn't go to bed. Instead, I went to my basement workshop and started planning. Because Porter Keller doesn't just identify problems, he fixes them. The next morning, Nola left for work with barely a word, clutching both phones and avoiding eye contact. I waited until her car disappeared around the corner, then called my oldest friend. "Roddy's gym, this is Roddy." "It's Porter. I need to talk." Roddy Kowalski had been my roommate in college before he joined the Marines. Now he ran a no-frills gym in Southie and looked like he could bench press a Buick. More importantly, he was the only person I trusted completely. "What's wrong? You sound like someone gone." "My marriage. Can you meet me for coffee?" An hour later, we sat in a diner that served coffee strong enough to wake anyone. I laid out everything I'd discovered, watching Roddy's expression grow darker with each detail. "So, what do you want to do about it?" he asked when I finished. "I want to audit her life the same way I audit failing companies. Find every weakness, every vulnerability, every lie. Then I want to systematically dismantle everything she's built." Roddy grinned, the kind of smile that had terrified enemy combatants in Afghanistan. "I like it. What do you need?" "Muscle, not marriage counseling, and maybe some technical support." "You got it, but Porter, don't do anything stupid. We're going to be smart about this." I spent the rest of the day making preparations. First, I quietly transferred half our joint savings to a personal account I'd opened years ago, but never used. Then I disabled her access to our joint credit cards, citing suspicious activity to the bank. Finally, I installed hidden cameras in our house, not in the bedroom or bathroom, but in the common areas where she might bring her boyfriend. All perfectly legal, all perfectly documented. That evening, Nola came home early for the first time in weeks. She seemed nervous, jumpy. "How was your day?" I asked, playing the oblivious husband. "Fine. Listen, Porter, there's a company gala tomorrow night. Hartwell Industries is hosting it at that new rooftop place downtown. You should come." "Really? You never invite me to work things?" "I know, but—" She fidgeted with her wedding ring. "I think it would be good for us. You know, get out together." I smiled. "Sounds perfect. I'll wear my good suit." What she didn't know was that I'd already RSVP'd to the event. One of my clients had connections at Hartwell, and I'd managed to get myself invited independently. I wanted to see this Ethan character for myself, and I wanted to meet Nola's boss, the man whose office had apparently become their personal playground. The next evening, I arrived at the gala 30 minutes before Nola. The venue was impressive, a glass-walled rooftop bar with panoramic views of Boston Harbor. Corporate types in expensive suits mingled over cocktails that cost more than most people's weekly grocery budget. I found the Hartwell Industries crowd easily enough. They wore their company pride like expensive cologne. That's when I spotted him. Ethan Bloom, according to his name tag. 31, project manager, with the kind of cocky smile that suggested he'd never faced real consequences for anything in his life. He was talking to a woman I assumed was Nola's boss, an ice-cold blonde in her 40s who radiated the kind of authority that came from old money and older connections. "Excuse me," I said, approaching them. "I'm Porter Keller. I believe you work with my wife, Nola Varro." Ethan's face went pale. The woman, her name tag read Cassie Dorsey, HR Director, studied me with sharp blue eyes. "Mr. Keller," she said smoothly, "how interesting to finally meet you. I'm Cassie Dorsey, and this is Ethan Bloom." Ethan mumbled something that might have been a greeting, looking like he wanted to crawl under the nearest table. "Nola's told me so much about her work here," I continued conversationally, "especially the late nights. She's very dedicated." "Yes," Cassie said, her voice carrying an undertone I couldn't quite identify. "Very dedicated indeed." That's when Liam Dorsey appeared beside me, Cassie's husband and Nola's direct supervisor. He was a thin man in his early 40s with the kind of quiet intensity that made you want to confess secrets you'd never told anyone. He sat down next to me at the bar and spoke in a voice only I could hear. "Your wife is crossing lines at work." Before I could respond, Nola appeared as if summoned by some sixth sense. She rushed over, her face flushed with panic. "Liam! Porter! What are you two talking about?" She forced a laugh that sounded like breaking glass. "That's my husband." Liam looked at her with the expression of a man studying an interesting insect. Then he turned back to me and said coldly and clearly, "Not for long." The conversation around us faded. Every person within 20 feet turned to stare. Nola's face went through several shades of red before settling on a sickly pale. I stood up slowly, straightening my tie. "Well," I said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "this has been illuminating. Bartender, a bottle of your most expensive champagne for the happy couple." I gestured toward Nola and Ethan, who looked like they wanted to disappear into the floor. "On me," I added with a smile that felt like broken glass in my mouth. As I walked toward the exit, Cassie Dorsey slipped me her business card. "Call me," she whispered. "I know everything." Nola chased me outside, her stilettos clicking desperately on the concrete. "Porter, wait! You don't understand." "I understand perfectly," I said, not turning around. "Enjoy your party, Nola. We'll talk when you get home." but I had no intention of going home. Instead, I drove to Roddy's gym and started planning phase 2 of my audit, because the books were about to be balanced. Cassie Dorsey's office was all glass and steel, designed to intimidate. It worked on most people. But after 24 hours of planning my wife's professional destruction, I was beyond intimidation. "Coffee?" she offered, gesturing to a chair across from her massive desk. "Just answers," I said, sitting down. "How long have you known?" 3 months, maybe 4. Cassie's voice was crisp, professional. "Your wife and Mr. Bloom have been remarkably indiscreet. Hotel bookings on company cards, extended business lunches, using the conference room after hours for activities that definitely weren't in anyone's job description." She slid a manila folder across the desk. "HR has been building a file. We were waiting for the right moment to act." I flipped through the documents, credit card statements, key card access logs, even photographs taken by building security. My wife and her boyfriend had been sloppy, leaving a paper trail that would make any forensic accountant weep with joy. "Why are you showing me this?" I asked. "Because Liam wants them gone, but he needs clean hands. Corporate politics." She leaned back in her chair. "You, however, are under no such constraints. What are you proposing? You give us a reason to fire them both. We make sure it sticks. Everyone wins except the people who deserve to lose." I studied Cassie's face. She had the kind of calculating intelligence that built empires and destroyed careers with equal efficiency. "What's in it for you?" "Nola's been undermining my authority for months. Ethan's a mediocre employee who thinks his charm can substitute for competence. I want them gone, and I want it done cleanly." "Consider it done," I said, standing up. "But I do this my way. Wouldn't have it any other." That afternoon, I drove to Ethan's apartment complex, a trendy converted warehouse in the South End that screamed, "Trust Fund Baby," playing at Independence. His building had the kind of security that looked impressive, but could be bypassed by anyone with basic knowledge of electronic locks. I'd learned a few things during my years fixing broken supply chains, including how to get into places I wasn't supposed to be. Ethan's apartment was exactly what I'd expected. Expensive furniture with no personality, a gaming setup that cost more than most people's cars, and photographs of himself at various exotic locations. The kind of place that said, "I have money but no substance." I didn't steal anything. I didn't break anything valuable. But I did leave my mark. His precious gaming computer. I reformatted the hard drive and installed nothing but educational software for children. His designer suits? I had them dry cleaned and donated to charity, leaving the receipts on his bed. His bathroom? I replaced all his expensive grooming products with drugstore generics. And in the middle of his coffee table, I left a single note. "Next time, I break more than your toys. PK." Then I waited. Ethan arrived home around 6:30, probably expecting to spend the evening playing video games and texting my wife. Instead, he found his entire life subtly rearranged. I watched from the parking garage as he discovered my handiwork. The scream of rage that echoed through the building was deeply satisfying. When he finally came downstairs to his car, I was waiting. "Evening, Ethan." He spun around, eyes wide with panic. Up close, he was smaller than he'd seemed at the gala, soft around the edges, with the kind of pale complexion that came from too much time indoors. You can't just break into my apartment." "I didn't break anything," I said mildly. "I just rearranged a few things. Think of it as a home makeover." "I'm calling the police." "With what evidence? That someone cleaned your apartment and donated your clothes to charity?" I stepped closer and he backed against his BMW. "Here's how this is going to work, Ethan. You're going to stop texting my wife. You're going to stop meeting her for business lunches. And you're going to find a new job, preferably in another city." "You can't make me do anything." I grabbed him by his expensive tie and slammed him against his car hard enough to make him gasp. For a moment, I let him see exactly how angry I really was. "One more text to my wife. I whispered, "and you'll be fishing your teeth out of Boston Harbor. Do we understand each other?" He nodded frantically, and I released him. He slumped against his car, shaking. "Good talk," I said, walking away. "Oh, and Ethan, you might want to check your credit report. I hear identity theft is a real problem these days." I left him there, hyperventilating in the parking garage, and drove to my local bar to set Phase 3 in motion. The Anchor was the kind of neighborhood dive where everyone knew everyone else's business, and gossip spread faster than wildfire. It was also where Maya Chen and Jules Martinez, Nola's work friends, liked to grab drinks after their yoga class. They were already there when I arrived, hunched over Cosmos and talking in the animated way that meant they were discussing someone else's drama. "Porter!" Maya called out when she spotted me. "What are you doing here?" "Drowning my sorrows," I said, taking the stool next to them. "Can I buy you ladies a drink?" "Uh-oh," Jules said, her eyes lighting up with the prospect of fresh gossip. "What happened?" I signaled the bartender for another round and put on my best wounded husband expression. "I probably shouldn't say anything, but did you know Nola's been working late with that Ethan guy?" Maya and Jules exchanged glances. They knew something. "Porter," Maya said carefully, "maybe you should talk to Nola about this." "I tried. She says it's just work." I took a long sip of my beer. "But I heard some interesting things about his hotel bills. Something about the company credit card getting a real workout." Jules nearly choked on her drink. "Wait, what?" "I probably shouldn't have said anything," I continued, playing up the innocent confusion. "I'm sure it's all perfectly innocent. I mean, what kind of business meetings happen at the Ritz-Carlton at midnight?" The two women looked at each other with the kind of wide-eyed excitement that meant this story would be all over social media within the hour. "Porter," Maya said slowly, "you need to know something." And just like that, they told me everything. How Nola had been bragging about her special projects with Ethan. How she'd been posting cryptic social media updates about finding happiness where you least expect it. How she'd been shopping for expensive lingerie and charging it to accounts she thought I couldn't access. By the time I left the bar, Nola's reputation was already starting to crumble. Maya and Jules were the kind of people who treated gossip like a competitive sport, and I'd just handed them Olympic-level material. My phone buzzed with a text from Cassie. "HR meeting tomorrow at 9 a.m. Formal investigation begins. Hope you're ready for fireworks." I smiled and typed back, "Let the show begin." I arrived at Hartwell Industries at 8:45 a.m., dressed in my best suit and carrying a briefcase full of evidence. The receptionist directed me to Conference Room B, where Cassie Dorsey sat with two other HR representatives and a man I didn't recognize. "Mr. Keller," Cassie said, standing to shake my hand. "Thank you for coming. This is Janet Mills from Legal, Tom Harrison from Internal Audit, and Detective Ray Sullivan from the Boston Police Department's Financial Crimes Unit." My eyebrows shot up. "Detective?" "When company credit cards are involved in personal expenses, we have to follow protocol," Cassie explained. "Please, have a seat." For the next hour, I laid out everything I'd discovered. The secret phone, the hotel bookings, the after-hours access logs, even the security footage Cassie had provided. Detective Sullivan took notes while Janet Mills recorded everything. "This is quite comprehensive," Tom Harrison said, reviewing the financial documents. "Mr. Bloom has charged over $15,000 in personal expenses to his corporate card in the past 3 months alone." "What about Mrs. Varro?" Detective Sullivan asked. "She's been more careful with the financial side," Cassie admitted. "But the misuse of company property and violation of workplace conduct policies are clear." "What happens now?" I asked. "Now we bring them in for questioning," Janet Mills said. "Separately, of course." They started with Ethan. I watched through the conference room's glass walls as security escorted him upstairs, his face pale and confused. 20 minutes later, he was back down, carrying a cardboard box and looking like he'd been hit by a truck. Nola was next. I positioned myself where she could see me through the glass as she walked past. Her eyes went wide with shock, then narrowed with fury. She mouthed something that I'm pretty sure wasn't, "I love you." The meeting with Nola lasted longer, almost an hour. When she finally emerged, her perfect corporate composure had cracked completely. Her hair was disheveled, her makeup smeared, and she was clutching a tissue like a lifeline. Cassie appeared beside me. She denied everything at first. Then she tried to blame Ethan. Then she offered to resign quietly if we'd keep this off her record. And we declined. Some violations require public consequences. That afternoon, the story exploded across the office. Maya and Jules had been busy on social media, and their posts had been shared and reshared until half of Boston's corporate community knew about the scandal. The Hartwell affairs was actually trending on Twitter. Nola tried calling me 17 times. I let every call go to voicemail. When I finally went home that evening, I found her sitting at our kitchen table, surrounded by empty wine bottles and crumpled tissues. "Porter," she said, her voice raw from crying, "we need to talk." "No," I said, setting my briefcase down carefully. "We really don't. You don't understand." "I understand perfectly." I pulled out the divorce papers I'd had prepared that morning. "I understand that you've been cheating on me for months. I understand that you've been stealing from your company. I understand that you've been lying to my face every single day." She stared at the papers like they might bite her. "Porter, please. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Ethan and it just happened." "Nothing just happens, Nola. You made choices. Now you get to live with the consequences." "What about us? What about our marriage?" I laughed, and the sound was ugly even to my own ears. "What marriage? You ended that the first time you screwed him on your boss's conference table." Her face went white. "How did you—" "Security cameras, Nola. Your company has excellent security cameras." She started crying again, but I was done being moved by her tears. I'd seen her practice this same performance in the mirror when she wanted something from me. "I've already moved out half our money," I continued. "The house is in my name, so you'll need to find somewhere else to stay. I suggest you do it quickly, because the story's going to be in the business section of the Globe tomorrow." "You can't do this to me." "I'm not doing anything to you. I'm just making sure everyone knows exactly who you are." She lunged at me then, all claws and fury, screaming about how I'd ruined her life. I caught her wrists easily. All those years of manual labor had left me stronger than she'd ever bothered to notice. "Your life was ruined the moment you decided to betray me," I said quietly. I just made sure everyone else could see it too. That's when my phone rang. It was Roddy. "Porter, you need to get down here, now." "What's wrong?" "Your boy Ethan just showed up at the gym. He's drunk, he's angry, and he's asking for your address." I looked at Nola, who had heard every word. "Tell him I'll be right there." "Porter, don't," Nola started. "Stay in the house," I told her. "Pack your things. Be gone by morning." Then I left her there, crying in our kitchen, and drove to what I hoped would be the final confrontation. Roddy's gym after hours looked like something out of a noir film, all shadows and harsh fluorescent lighting. I found Ethan in the parking lot, leaning against his scratched BMW and clutching a bottle of expensive whiskey like it was a life preserver. "Porter," he slurred when he saw me. "We need to talk, man to man." "I'm listening," I said, keeping my distance. Drunk people were unpredictable, and I could see Roddy watching from the gym's front window. "This is all your fault," Ethan continued, taking another swig from the bottle. "I lost my job because of you. Nola won't answer my calls because of you. My life is ruined because of you." "Your life is ruined because you couldn't keep your hands off another man's wife," I replied calmly. "I just made sure there were consequences." "Consequences?" He laughed bitterly. "Do you know what it's like to have your entire professional reputation destroyed overnight? Do you know what it's like to have your family find out about your mistakes through Twitter?" "No," I said. "But I know what it's like to find out your wife is cheating through a text message meant for someone else. I know what it's like to discover that the person you trusted most in the world has been lying to your face for months, so forgive me if I don't have much sympathy for your professional reputation." Ethan threw the bottle at my feet, where it shattered against the asphalt. "You think you're so smart, don't you? You think you've won?" "I think I've balanced the books." That's when he rushed me. Ethan might have been younger than me, but he was soft from years of desk work and drunk from a day of drowning his sorrows. I sidestepped his clumsy charge and let momentum carry him into the side of his own car. Roddy emerged from the gym like an avenging angel, all 240 pounds of Marine Corps muscle. "Problem here, Porter?" Ethan looked up at Roddy and seemed to finally grasp the reality of his situation. He was drunk, alone, and facing two men who had every reason to dislike him intensely. "This isn't over," he mumbled, struggling to his feet. "Yeah, it is," Roddy said, grabbing Ethan by the collar and lifting him off the ground like he weighed nothing. "You're going to get in your fancy car, drive away, and never bother Porter or his wife again. Because if I see you around here again, I'm going to introduce you to some friends of mine who make me look like a kindergarten teacher." Roddy deposited Ethan in his driver's seat with surprising gentleness. "And Ethan, next time you want to drink and drive, maybe call an Uber. The cops around here are real strict about that kind of thing." We watched Ethan drive away, weaving slightly, but staying on the road. He'd probably make it home without ruining anyone, which was more consideration than he deserved. "That's the end of him," Roddy said with satisfaction. "What about Nola?" "That's tomorrow's problem." But tomorrow came sooner than expected. When I got home, I found Nola's car gone and a note on the kitchen table. "This isn't over, Porter. You'll regret this." I laughed and crumpled up the note. She still didn't understand that the game was already over, and she'd lost the moment she decided to cheat. The next morning brought the newspaper article, a small piece in the business section about financial irregularities at local consulting firm lead to terminations. It didn't mention names, but anyone who knew the players would understand exactly what had happened. My phone rang around 10 a.m. It was Cassie Dorsey. "Mr. Keller? I thought you'd want to know that both Mr. Bloom and your wife have been officially terminated. Security footage and financial records made the case quite clear." "What about criminal charges?" "Mr. Bloom will be making restitution for the misappropriated funds. As for your wife, her violations were more policy-related than criminal, but I doubt she'll find work in this industry again anytime soon." "Thank you, Cassie, for everything. Thank you, Mr. Keller. You gave us exactly what we needed to clean house." After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen and looked around at the home Nola and I had built together. 8 years of marriage, reduced to property division and legal paperwork. It should have felt sadder than it did. Instead, it felt like the end of a very long audit. All the numbers finally balanced, all the discrepancies accounted for, all the problems identified and resolved. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You destroyed my life. I hope you're happy." I typed back, "I didn't destroy your life, Nola. I just made sure everyone could see what you'd already done to it yourself." Then I blocked her number and poured myself a cup of coffee. 6 months later, I heard through the grapevine that Nola had moved to Phoenix and was working as a receptionist at a small real estate office. Ethan had apparently moved back in with his parents in Connecticut and was delivering food for a living. Maya and Jules still occasionally tried to get gossip out of me when I ran into them around town, but I'd moved on to more interesting topics. Like the woman I'd started dating, a forensic accountant named Rebecca, who appreciated both my attention to detail and my talent for uncovering hidden problems. "You know," Rebecca said one evening over dinner, "I've never met anyone who could weaponize an audit quite like you did." "It's all about finding the right leverage points," I replied. "Every system has weaknesses. You just have to know where to look." "Remind me never to cheat on you," she said with a laugh. "Don't worry," I said, raising my wine glass. "I'm much better at building things than tearing them down, but when someone forces my hand..." You balance the books. Exactly. I thought about Nola sometimes, usually when I was working on a particularly complex case. She taught me something valuable about human nature. People will always reveal their true character when they think no one is watching. The trick is to make sure someone is always watching. Porter Keller doesn't just identify problems. He fixes them. And sometimes, fixing a problem means making sure everyone can see it clearly. The audit was complete. The books were balanced. And for the first time in months, everything added up perfectly.